Fox News contributor and the author of the new book, The Greatest Comeback Ever, Joe Concha, is here. Great to see you, Joe. You know, I hate to destroy a really marvelous clip, especially with the soundtrack of Freebird in the background. But I love that clip of J.D. Vance interacting with our soldiers overseas in Germany. But could you for a minute imagine if that were Kamala Harris?
No, that's not really coming up in the old visual right now, Charlie. And that's why perhaps she's not the commander-in-chief right now. And I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders, to your monologue, said it best last year when she talked about this election being a choice between normal and crazy. I mean, Republicans think Democrats are insane, independents think they're insane, and left-wing Democrats think, well, they're not insane enough. And maybe that's why AOC, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, they're the front runners for the nomination right now. I know it's early. And David Attention Hog is number 2 at the DNC. And the irony here with J.D. Vance is that Goofy Tim Walz seemingly was chosen because he went viral on the left and was cheered by legacy media for calling J.D. Vance weird. And Kamala's campaign fell in love with that line for some reason. And the deeper irony is that J.D. Vance is, as we see, quite normal. He interacts well with soldiers because he's a former Marine. While Walz, he looks like, you know, the least and sounds like the least cultured guy you'd find in a bus station. So now Democrats are trying to conjure up this image of authenticity, right, by swearing a lot on social media. And it's just so phony. They seem to think the angrier they get, the more unhinged they act, that somehow makes it look like they really care. But it seems like the only thing they care about is protecting those who entered the country illegally, who beat their wives, as we saw with Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man, the MS-13 gang member recently deported to El Salvador, to the horror of liberal lawmakers. And now this judge in Milwaukee that we're hearing about today that was arrested by Pam Bondi's DOJ for protecting an illegal who beat 2 people and put him in the hospital, and the judge is protecting that illegal and ignoring the victims. That, Charlie, is weird.
Yeah, truly. And, you know, you look at, it's almost like some of them are trying to learn a lesson from Donald Trump, but they're not learning the right lessons from Donald Trump. Those, of course, being the idea of embracing common sense issues at the center. It's kind of like, you know, we're seeing the Tea Party movement from 15 years ago that destroyed the Republican Party, tore it apart, and created the opening for Donald Trump, finally hitting the Democrat Party. And I've always believed that when the Democrat Party comes apart at the seams, it's going to really come apart because you've got some really sort of wackadoodle people and wackadoodle ideas on the Democrat side.
But precisely. And that's the whole thing here, Charlie. After 1994, Bill Clinton takes a shellacking in the midterms, and he was politically smart enough to move to the middle, right? The era of big government's over. He worked with Newt Gingrich in terms of welfare reform. We had this strange thing called a balanced budget amendment, and he won in 96 quite easily. So Democrats should heed that lesson and say, okay, let's go back to the middle, or at least try to go somewhere left of center. And instead now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is out on this Fight the Oligarchy tour. Now, oligarchy, excuse me, it's a word I don't use very often in conversation.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. And she flew 5 times on a private jet to get to these rallies to talk about how horrible billionaires are. And you talked about it before. They voted against a bill that would protect women from men in sports. I mean, that is political suicide. They vote against the Laken Riley Act. I mean, that is an 80-20 issue. And voting against a bill that simply asks for ID when you're voting. So they keep stepping on these rakes and handing all these victories to Donald Trump. And until there's a leader from the center that could take hold of this party and say, stop listening to the crazies, we got to get back to business and do what Clinton did in 94, they're not going to win any elections anytime soon, Charlie.
And of course, that was the big difference between the Tea Party and today's Democrat Party, is that the Tea Party was dragging Republicans back to the Constitution. Democrat AOC and Bernie Sanders is like dragging the Democrat Party over to the Soviet Constitution or something. It's truly insane. And I don't know what's worse, the actual people that are doing it or their ideas. But we thank you so much for joining us tonight, Joe Concha.
Great to see you, Charlie. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.